And we're live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Municipal Council agenda for Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. The Town of East Gwillimbury. For electronic council meetings, members of the public are encouraged to provide written comments regarding matters on a council agenda to the clerk at eastgwillimbury.ca by 5 p.m. on the day of the council meeting. At this point, I'd like to call our meeting to order. I would make note that Councillor Cathy Morton is absent with notice this evening. With that, I'll move to declaration of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest at this time? I'm not seeing any. We will move to our land acknowledgement. The Town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I'd like to thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in this responsibility. At our point of community announcements, I wanted to share a couple of items with members of council. Council did have a workshop last week. However, this is our first regular meeting of council. I would once again like to wish everyone a very happy new year. This morning, I participated in a virtual session with the Ministry of Finance in the advance of the 2022 Ontario budget. I had the opportunity to identify areas where East Gwillimbury would benefit from provincial funding and took the opportunity to speak about the sewage lagoons and the Upper York sewage solution as well. This afternoon, I joined the Minister of Infrastructure for an update on the Ontario Connects plan and received a presentation from ministry staff outlining their plan to bring access to high-speed internet to all communities in Ontario by the end of 2025. It was shared that though shovel-ready projects and new investments, Ontario has committed $900 million to date, improving broadband and cellular connectivity in underserved areas and enabling access to high-speed internet for nearly 375,000 premises. It's a very good news story. And I want to share that Bell Let's Talk Aware campaign will be on January 26th. Acknowledging and treating mental illness has always been important, however, even more so during these past few years. Please visit letstalk.bell.ca for more information, education, and how to end the stigma on mental illness. Are there any updates from members of council? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like at this time to remind everyone, I know an email went out. I have started a team simply called East Gwillimbury for the coldest night of the year walk in support of Blue Door Shelters. There has been some donations made. I'm still not getting all the emails of who actually made them, but I was on and had a quick look, and thank you to the staff that have done that so far. That is February the 26th. It is virtual, so it's a self-organized route, and you could walk it solo, you could walk it with a team, or you could walk it with a small group of people and just do it that way. So anybody that's looking to donate or become part of that, you can certainly look on coldest night of the year and look up the East Gwillimbury team, and we'd be glad to take the donations or have more walkers.
Thank you very much. I know that each year there are several members of council that are part of this, so I expect that there will be again this year, and perhaps we can have some of our residents as well. Are there any other updates at this time? Not seeing any. I will move along to item E, and that's COVID-19 update, and I would turn that over to Mr. Webster, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, and for those joining us tonight. We got a very busy night ahead of us. We had a lot of discussion last week at the workshop on a COVID-19 session. And at that point in time, we're well aware that cases continue to rise in a not a good direction at this point. We're hopeful there will be a plateau. We continue to work with our regional colleagues. There were some questions asked about ICU occupancy levels, and that was distributed to council. At this point in time, we do not have a specific update for this evening. However, Deputy Valchich, who heads up this initiative with Chief McKenzie, is available if there's any questions or comments from council.
Thank you very much. Members of council, are there questions of Mr. Valchich this time? I'm not seeing any. I know that we get notices out very regularly, and I think we are very well caught up most of the time, unless there's something that has changed dramatically in the last couple of days. So I'm not seeing any questions from members of council. So Mr. Valchich, thank you very much, unless there's something that you had very specific that you did want to bring to our attention at this time.
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor, other than to indicate that last week we did report to you that we, as Mr. Webster indicated, we had pretty significant incidents amongst our broader employee team that we reported between just before the holidays and coming back in the new year. Pleased to report that at least over the past 5 days since we reported last, that trend seems to be at least having the initial stages of going the other way, which is very positive. So we'll keep you informed, but nothing further to add at this point.
Thank you very much. Could I have a mover and seconder to receive this presentation, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. We are at item F of our agenda at this point, and this is a statutory public meeting, a zoning bylaw amendment application by Green Lane North Realty Inc. and Green Lane North East GP Limited, 18574 and 18818 Woodbine Avenue. I'll just read the procedural comments at this time. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input on planning applications received by the town prior to a full technical analysis being conducted by our staff. No decision to approve or refuse an application will be made here tonight. There will be presentations from both town planning staff and the applicants on the development applications. Following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposals. Submissions can also be made in writing. I will then ask either staff or the applicant to answer questions related to the applications. Once we have heard from members of the public, I will ask members of council if they have any questions or comments. Your participation tonight is welcome, and by hearing all comments, we enable the making of informed decisions. It should be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared by staff and presented at a future council meeting assessing the merits of the application before us and providing council with a recommendation on whether the proposal should be approved, modified, or refused. It is very important that the town receive the names and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning applications. Therefore, if you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any future council meetings concerning the application being considered, you must provide your contact information to the clerk. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or resident have a right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Land Tribunal. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town before the bylaw is passed. The tribunal may dismiss all or a part of the appeal made in respect of the application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded for storing and broadcasting on the internet. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information is being collected and maintained for the purpose of sending correspondence relating to matters before council and creating a record that is available to the public in hard copy format and on the internet in an electronic format pursuant to Section 27 of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protections of Privacy Act. Questions about the collection of personal information should be directed to the town clerk. I will now ask the General Manager of Development Services to begin with the presentations, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to members of council. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention that this is our first zoning bylaw amendment application to implement the land use designation of council's approval of the Highway 404 Employment Secondary Plan. Council adopted the plan back in July of 2020. So this is the first zoning application to implement those land use policies. So as you mentioned, Madam Mayor, this is our statutory public meeting. Our planner, Victoria Moore, will go through a presentation to provide an overview with respect to the existing land uses, the official plan designations, and the zoning bylaw amendment application particulars. The applicant has their consulting team here. I understand Mr. Mike Rice and John McGovern are in attendance, and they're here to answer any questions, but they do have their consulting team, which will be led by Arthi Tanya, who will start off the presentation, and then Mr. Michael Larkin, their land use planner, and then finally Shelley Lone, their ecologist on the file. At this point, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it over to Victoria Moore to start the presentations. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and any members of the public with us tonight. My name is Victoria Moore. I'm a planner here at the town. And as Marco mentioned, I'm here tonight to provide a brief presentation on the zoning bylaw amendment application for 18574 and 18818 Woodbine Avenue. Can I please have the next slide? So the subject land is located south of Mount Albert Road, east of Highway 404 on the west side of Woodbine Avenue. The combined property area is approximately 40 hectares with frontage along Woodbine Avenue. The site is currently vacant and site works are underway in accordance with the council approval from September 2021. Next slide, please. The subject properties are located within the Highway 404 Employment Corridor Secondary Plan area and are designated Prestige Employment, General Employment, with a portion of the land designated Environmental Protection Area. In the secondary plan, a north-south major collector road is also proposed through the lands, as well as a minor east-west collector. Next slide, please. The Prestige Employment designation is intended to provide prestige employment uses that require good access and high visibility along major transit routes. Some examples of permitted uses outlined in this designation of the secondary plan include offices, research and development, as well as light industrial uses such as manufacturing, processing, assembling, packaging, warehousing, and distribution. Prestige employment lands are to be designed in accordance with the Highway 404 Employment Corridor Urban Design Guidelines and shall be designed with high-profile buildings that utilize strong architectural design, building finishes, and landscaping. The general employment designation is intended to provide a broad range of employment uses and cater to lower density employment uses, mainly industrial manufacturing, assembly, warehousing, distribution, and logistics uses. And it also permits all of the uses permitted in the Prestige Employment Land Use Designation. The purpose of the Environmental Protection Area designation is to protect areas which have been identified as having environmental importance or that contain natural hazards. The subject lands contain both core and supporting areas of the town's natural heritage system. Next slide, please. The properties are currently zoned rural, and the rural zone permits a range of agricultural and agricultural related uses. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to employment general with a site-specific exception zone. The exception zone would permit the following additional land uses: cold storage distribution and a distribution center, as well as a truck refueling station and a truck repair garage, both as ancillary uses. Next slide. The applicant also proposes the following site-specific zone provisions: a minimum of 5% landscaping requirement on the first phase of the development, whereas the current bylaw requires 10% per site. The second is a parking requirement of 1 space per 185 square meters of net floor area for the new use. And this is the same parking standard that is used in the current zoning bylaw for similar large industrial uses. It's just that this use specifically isn't listed. The exceptions also include permissions for truck and trailer parking spaces to be included in the minimum parking requirements, and for accessible parking spaces to apply only to car spaces, excluding the truck and trailer parking. It also requests that loading spaces be permitted in the front yard abutting the building, and requests to permit a mezzanine in the building, which shall not be considered a story in accordance with the zoning bylaw definition, and thus excluded from the calculation of ground floor area. Next slide, please. The submitted zoning bylaw amendment application has been circulated and is currently under review by internal departments and external agencies. The following matters have been identified and will be addressed in a future recommendation report: consistency and conformity with provincial, regional, and local planning policies, the appropriateness and compatibility of the proposed development and the requested special zone provisions, review for any other potential zoning deficiencies, review for any potential traffic implications both on and off the site, the evaluation and confirmation of environmental boundaries on the site, and the commemoration of the heritage building that was removed to facilitate this proposal, and finally an urban design review. Next slide, please. So planning staff at the time of creating this presentation did not have any public comments, but that has changed. So we have received some comments on the application from members of the public, primarily related to traffic concerns, potential impacts of the development on surrounding wells, as well as concerns for noise and dust pollution during construction. The applicant has been made aware of the comments, and staff will assure that they are addressed in future submissions. Next slide, please. So staff will continue to undertake a technical review of the subject application, including any discussions from today's public planning meeting. A comprehensive report with the recommendations for the zoning bylaw amendment will be presented at a future council meeting, and the applicant will submit a formal site plan application for the proposed development for council's future consideration. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent.
Thank you, Victoria. Good evening, Mayor Haxon, members of council and staff. My name is Arthi Thaya, and I'm the development manager at Rice Commercial Group on behalf of the property owners of 18574 and 18818 Woodbine Avenue, Green Lane North Realty Inc., and Green Lane Northeast GP Limited. I would like to start off by conveying my thanks to the staff for the review of our application and the scheduling of tonight's public meeting. I look forward to being the liaison for staff as we move through the processing of this application. As you know, Rice Group is based in York Region and is a recognized developer of commercial properties in the Greater Toronto Area. We are committed to developing high-quality retail and commercial developments with the simple philosophy, we develop properties where people work. We see great opportunities in bringing employment lands to the market, and our objective in all cases is to continue to own the properties after they are developed. As such, we become proud members of the communities we invest in and take on an active role in its continued growth. Next slide, please. This evening, I am joined by Michael Larkin, President at Larkin Plus, our planners on the file, and Shelley Lonis, Senior Ecologist at GEI Consultants, our environmental consultants on the file. Members of our senior management team are also online and available to answer any questions that may arise. Next slide, please. Our site in East Gwillimbury is located north of Green Lane East and between Highway 404 and Woodbine Avenue, consisting of approximately 60 hectares in area. The lands are between Woodbine Avenue and Highway 404 with Mount Albert Road on the northern limit. The lands will be developed in phases as illustrated on the conceptual site plan on the screen. Through this zoning bylaw amendment, we're looking to transform these lands from rural to employment general to permit the illustrated 110,000 square meter advanced logistics and distribution facility. The site plan will incorporate white roofs, electric shunt vehicles to marshal the trailers around the site, and provisions are in place for a significant incoming electrical supply to accommodate fleet electrification for 2030 and beyond. As detailed on the plan on the screen, landscaping consists of 14.9% of the area. The area in the southwest may present a business expansion area in the future, hence why we are seeking a bylaw provision of 5% as a landscaping requirement. There is a 6-meter landscape area along the perimeter and a 14-meter landscape area along the 404 as depicted in this current site plan. Next slide, please. The traffic impact study completed for the Phase 1 lands presents a trip generation based on weekday AM and PM peak hours, with trip rates found in the Institute of Transportation Engineers ITE manual. This facility will minimize the effects that peak hours have on traffic by spreading out their traffic volume over a scheduled period of time with a predetermined number of trucks coming to and from the facility. All inbound shipments are assigned a specific arrival time. We have been working diligently with the Town of East Gwillimbury, Region of York, and the Conservation Authority to appropriately plan our proposed development to ensure we are maximizing benefits to the communities we're members of through job creation, sustainable practices, and positive ecological offsetting. It is our intent to submit a full site plan application for these Phase 1 lands by the end of January. Our proposed development initiates the infrastructure investment in the Town of East Gwillimbury 404 Employment Secondary Plan for development and represents good land use planning through its compliance with upper tier policies of the province. I will now ask if Michael Larkin to present to you our proposed development in further detail, the zoning bylaw amendment application, its conformances to plans and policies, current status updates, and project benefits. He'll be followed by Shelley Lonis, who will conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can people hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for accommodating us tonight with this public hearing. As mentioned, I'm Michael Larkin, President of Larkin Land Use Planners. I also have with me John Buckley, who is one of our planners at the office. Can I have the next slide, please? So as noted in the previous discussions presentation, the proposal for you tonight is for an advanced logistic and distribution center of about 110,000 square meters, which for people of my vintage means about 1,100,000 square feet. Next slide, please. So the current application before you is for a zoning bylaw amendment, which will rezone the lands from rural to an open space to an employment general designation, with exceptions to permit the development of the project. There's also a topsoil removal permit and a farmhouse demolition permit that have been with the town. Future applications will include a zoning amendment application for the balance of the lands which are identified as Phase 2 up to Mount Albert Road, and both Phase 1 and Phase 2 site plan approval applications. Next slide, please. So the location of the subject lands have been identified previously by staff, so I won't spend much time on this. The site we're dealing with right now, which is outlined in the magenta color, is identified as Phase 1. and as we noted, are currently vacant of structures except for the farmhouse, which is being removed. The access to the subject lands will be provided from Woodbine Avenue. South of the property, you'll see on the plan there is Green Lane, which provides convenient access to Highway 404. Next slide, please. So we prepared for our client a planning justification report, which looked in detail to the land use planning policy context, which examined the York Region Official Plan, which identifies this area as an urban area, the town's Official Plan 2018, which identifies the employment area with natural heritage systems, and Highway 404 Employment Corridor Secondary Plan. We also looked at the various provincial plans to demonstrate conformity to those plans as well, and that's all within our planning justification report. Next slide, please. So as noted before, the current zoning is rural and open space. This is for a zoning amendment to permit the proposed development. The proposed zone standards are on this slide. I won't go through them in detail. It's really more specific detail for how the site plan will be laid out. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the conceptual view of the site plan, which is being prepared, showing the proposed development adjacent to the Highway 404 corridor and Woodbine Avenue to the east. Also, we show two artists' renderings of the proposed development. The top rendering is of the entrance to the building, which is located towards the rear of the building, towards Highway 404, and so on. The next slide, please. Some of the project benefits that we've identified within our planning justification report, but also here to you tonight, is that, as I mentioned, the project complies with provincial interest in encouraging employment growth within municipalities. It's estimated the project will create approximately 1,000 permanent jobs for the Phase 1 development. The York Regional Official Plan recognizes the importance of employment lands as major drivers of economic activity and the importance they will have in ensuring a sustainable growth of jobs in the future. The development supports the efficient use of infrastructure and public services, especially given its location. The building will be constructed using high quality materials intended to be aesthetically pleasing when viewed from, well, both Highway 404 as well as Woodbine. Appropriate lighting, landscaping, energy efficiency, sustainability, and design elements will be addressed through the site plan stage to meet the intent of the town's urban design guidelines. And finally, the proposal maintains the integrity of the low density character of the community by being separated from those built forms by Highway 404 and is not adjacent to sensitive areas whose impacts would require mitigation. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll now hand the presentation over to Shelley to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mayor Haxon, members of council, and the public. As I was introduced before, my name is Shelley Lonis, and I work with GEI Consultants as a senior ecologist, and our team was retained by the proponent to complete the natural heritage work for the property. So upon engagement on this file, we were out on site right away to characterize the natural features. And as a part of that, we consulted immediately with Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority to make sure that they had the opportunity to come out on site and help us delineate some of those natural features that are present. The main feature includes a man-made pond that was dug historically when the initial family took over the farm, and it has since naturalized around the edges, but its origin was man-made, and it was associated with a farm drain that was used to drain the agricultural field. So as a part of the consultation, we had an initial virtual meeting with the LSRCA in early November, and we had some subsequent discussions with the team there to go over our plans for the topsoil stripping permits and then to discuss a path forward to look at taking that man-made pond offline because it was contributing thermally to the system, and it wasn't necessarily providing high quality habitat for wildlife just based on the flows coming in and limited flows coming out into the ditch roadside on Woodbine. And so through that consultation, we also had a site visit at the end of November with LSRCA staff to come out and confirm the limits that our ecologists had staked of the pond. And then also we looked at a proposed location for a constructed wetland where we could provide some benefit to the wildlife and the natural heritage system overall on the property. So the drawing shown here on the screen is a proposed constructed wetland in the north end of the site in the phase 2 lands. Actually, you can go to the next slide, please. There's some better visuals here. So our proposal will include a constructed wetland that will target wildlife habitat for turtles, including overwintering as well as nesting and basking sites. And it will also provide a better connection to the existing aquatic system to the north, which flows across Woodbine and then again up past Mount Albert. The other intent of the constructed wetland is to provide better water attenuation on site. Currently, through the man-made pond, there's often flooding across Woodbine into fields on the east. And this will provide a clean water source from the site into the constructed wetland up in the north, where there will be a much better opportunity to provide consistent habitat diversity for wildlife in the vicinity. And it will also provide a benefit ecologically on site because we can make sure that the that the water being provided into this feature is clean and not full of nutrient loading like some of the water contributions that are currently occurring in the man-made pond just due to agricultural practices. The other opportunity here is that there's an existing wetland immediately adjacent to where this proposed constructed wetland is located, and there is quite a bit of invasive plant species in that area. So the proposal would be that the existing wetland would be enhanced through invasive species removal and management, in addition to having the habitat diversity installed as part of the constructed wetland proposed. Next slide, please. And with that, I do conclude the presentation, and we are here if you do have any comments or questions. Thank you.
Council, questions or comments from the deputies? I'm not seeing any at this time. Oh, I am now. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and as has been said many times, we appreciate this employment coming to our town. I have some questions around the minimum 5% landscaping. I hear that you're saying that it's more than that, but you're asking for that lower amount for when you go forward. I'm just wondering for the rationale behind that and the environmental impact of that lower threshold of landscaping.
And you're directing this to the last presenter?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes. So landscaping, in addition to what's being proposed as part of the site plan, in the phase 2 lands with the constructed wetland, there is a substantial amount of natural landscaping that is proposed, including tree plantings, shrubs. There will be aquatic plants as a part of that landscaping plan as well. And so there is a requirement to replace trees that need to be removed as part of the plan, and those will be situated in the phase 2 lands in the north.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused because I thought you said, and excuse me if it wasn't you, if it was the person who was presenting before you, that it will be at 13% of the landscaping in phase 1, but that will come down to 5% during phase 2 is what I thought I heard. with the expansion to the southwest.
Oh,
just-
Michael, did you want to take that one then maybe?
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor Haxon and members of council. It's John McGovern.
Yes,
Thank
go
you
ahead,
for-
John.
Thank you for having us this evening and the opportunity to expand into that 14% landscape area in the future is what we wanted the provision to be able to reduce it to 5% for these lands. It's not for the phase two. Phase two lands will achieve the 10% landscaping, but in the future, should that area be repurposed for, we believe the intent may be electric charging stations or some surface works, then we would like to be able to proceed with a site plan amendment that allows us to avoid a minor variance or a zoning bylaw amendment to deal with the landscape, the minimum landscape requirement. It was a preemptive ask, and the 14% that you see there is intended to be built, but over the course of the next few years, as the facility matures and the other elements of it come into play, we wanted that provision.
Okay, got it. So it's beyond the phase two, it's future beyond that. Got that. So my question stands then about the environmental impact of reducing that landscaping from 10% to 5%. I'm looking at these drawings of these huge big parking lots and thinking about how much it would benefit from, islands of landscaping throughout the parking lot so that there's least minimizes the runoff, that there's some ability for the land to be absorbing some of the rainwater. And I know there's many parking lots that are built with islands of landscaping within them. And I really think it's important with so much parking lot on this site, not to reduce the landscaping, but to keep it at the 10%. So hopefully that when staff come back with a report, we can delve into that a little bit in more detail. The other piece I want to talk about was the constructed wetland. I really appreciate how you've tried to mitigate the environmentally protected area there with this new constructed wetland. Two questions. When would this be complete? And the second question is, who would be responsible for the long-term maintenance of this? I wouldn't want, a few years down the road to have it all taken over with invasive species, despite the best intentions when it's put in place. So when would it be constructed, and who would be responsible for the long-term maintenance of it?
I can answer that again as well, Councillor, through you, Mayor Haxon.
Yep.
The swim facility and constructed wetland will be constructed concurrently with the development of the phase one lands. We will be turning over in the summertime the pad, which will commence the building construction. Once the hard surfacing on that pad area is complete, in the interim, we'll be controlling the stormwater through erosion and sediment control drawings or plans, I'm sorry. But once the hard surfacing is complete, then the constructed wetland and the swim facility for the complete area will have to be in place and receiving the flows. Then the phase two lands will develop and connect into the storm drainage system and the sanitary and water supply systems in due time. But the facilities have to be in effect and working when the hard surfacing takes place on the phase one lands.
Wonderful, good. I just want to make sure it wasn't going to get kicked too far into the future and we'd be wondering when it was happening. That's wonderful. And I'm also would just like to ask when staff bring back a report on this, if we could get some mapping that shows beyond the site. Shelley referred to some of the natural heritage systems and wetlands just outside the site, and it'd be nice to have a map that demonstrated that so we could see the connectivity, because that's so important to wildlife. And I appreciate Shelley referring to that, but if we could see that with mapping, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of council with comments or questions at this time? Councillor Roy DeClemente and then Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to our presenters this evening. I guess two questions. One is just to clarify then, while the constructed wetland is located on phase two lands, it is going to be constructed and put into service during the first phase of development of these lands? That's my first question. And then secondly, it's a little bit more of a logistical question as far as land area is concerned. So we've got a natural heritage area that's sort of flagged as EP in the OP right now, that's being removed and shifted, I guess, is the best way of putting it, into this constructed wetland. What is the total acreage or area of the existing natural heritage area? And what is the acreage or area that's part of that constructed wetland? I want to make sure, or I want to have an assurance that that there's no net loss from a natural heritage perspective to the town. Please and thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Roy DiClemente, and through the mayor. The existing man-made or farm-purposed pond and surrounding area is approximately 3.5 acres. The constructed wetland, swim facility, and the remnant lands that will be planted around it are approximately 15 acres. And one thing I wanted to point out or mention earlier to Councillor Carruthers' question was the whole site is approximately top to bottom is 154 acres. We're going to have a 15-acre portion at the north end of the site that's going to represent about 10% of the whole site area. And I know, I mean, there'll be distribution of plantings and efforts throughout the site, but this will be functioning as one commercial center, if you will. It'll be single ownership. The buildings on the property will remain in our use over time, or in our ownership over time. And it will be much like a commercial center that has a storm pond, and the facilities will operate. We'll be responsible for the operation and maintenance of them, as well as the storm and sanitary servicing. So it will be in one ownership. It would be a great big shopping center at 156 acres, but if you think of it in those terms, then all these facilities will be integrated, owned, and maintained by us over time.
Okay. Councillor Roy DiClemente, your question's been answered?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Ms. Lonis. You mentioned something during your presentation, and I wrote it down because it perhaps you could, it didn't make sense to me, so perhaps you could explain it to the layperson. That the man-made pond was contributing thermally. What does that mean?
Yes, so contributing thermally, it's essentially a way of saying that the pond, as it sits there and there's no flows, it not only gets stagnant, but it gets really warm in temperature, which is not an ideal habitat for things like turtles. And there is a resident fish population, but they're not really moving in and out of there. And it's just the contributions thermally are not ideal for wildlife.
Okay, thank you. That makes perfect sense. And if I may continue along that line with respect to the turtle habitat that you were, and I think it's great that you're creating that. I'm just concerned though, and this is kind of jumping on what Councillor Carruthers was saying. You know, I'm concerned that we'll have this great habitat with, you know, the turtles and whatnot, but are they in jeopardy of having, you know, salt runoff from the parking lots or the neighboring roads and streets? Is that going to happen?
That's part of what my job is to make sure that does not happen. So yeah, that is always a concern when you hear constructed wetland and when it's in a stormwater management facility block. But there are water quality requirements. And so the current runoff from the MTO pond will be diverted around the constructed wetland. And so there will be none of that coming into the facility. And then the intent is that we are directing clean water from things like rooftops or foundation drains if that exists in the site plan, depending on what the plan looks like. It would be clean water going into the wetland, and if there is any water coming from the parking lots, then it would be going through a system to make sure that there aren't any contaminants that would harm the wildlife.
Good to know. I, you know, don't like my turtle soup salty, so that's good to hear. I just have just another question about the involvement of the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. You consulted with them, I would expect extensively. Did they have anything that you presented? Did they push back? Were there recommendations that they made, or were they pretty agreeable with your approach? I was just curious what the history is there.
Sure, yeah. We did have some back and forth on a couple of the features on site. They provided us with some additional data, which was quite helpful, just to make sure that the mapping we've prepared is accurate. So we made those adjustments, and as we put forward a more detailed plan for what the wetland will look like, I'm certain that we'll have some more back and forth. But we are working with them very openly in how we're characterizing the site as it is now, and then also what kind of targets we want to achieve with the constructed wetland.
Okay, and finally, Madam Mayor, through you to Ms. Lonis, just we're shoehorning a lot of development in this area, and there's some relocation of natural heritage spaces. And what's going to be the impact on any sort of natural heritage corridor that may exist? Or perhaps it doesn't exist because of the 404. I was just curious if there's any concerns in that respect.
Yes, thank you. So through our review, the feature that's on site that's associated with the man-made pond is it essentially starts there. There is a farm drain that feeds into it, and then it drains when it's very full or there's large events. It drains very minimally into the roadside ditch. So there isn't necessarily a corridor associated with the existing feature on site, but the constructed wetland and the area to the north of what we're being proposed will actually connect further north across Mount Albert. So there is a creek that does flow up into a larger system. If you look at a landscape plan, you can see it. So essentially we are providing that connection now for the habitat and the wildlife that were in that man-made pond will actually be more connected to the system broadly in the landscape. But we'll make sure that we do include a larger map for everyone to review to show that landscape connection and improvements.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. No further questions.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any at this time. Thank you very much. We'll move along to item number 4, and that is public comments. And speakers are to give their name and their address.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we do have one registered speaker for tonight's meeting, Jeff Lander, who has also previously provided a written submission with respect to this particular item on the agenda. And I believe we do have the speaker on the call at this time. So, Mr. Lander, please proceed.
Are you there, Mr. Lander? Your camera is not on, Mr. Lander.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe they may have been experiencing some technical issues. I do see that they're on the call and their mic is on. Just bear with us for a moment. We'll see if we can further assist Mr. Lander.
have a note, Madam Clerk, I don't know if you saw it as well, that Mr. Lander had indicated that apparently his mic is not working.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I am providing a phone number and a code for Mr. Lander to use. If you are able to hear us, please contact that phone number and the conference ID. You'll be able to get connected.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
while we're at it, while we're waiting for Mr. Lander, I did have another question. I'm just wondering if the proponent can advise us if they're any closer to being able to release the final tenant or the final occupant of the structure. There's been a significant amount of speculation, I guess is the best way of putting it at this point, and it's a challenging time to not be able to share any information further. So just wondering if we've made any further progress and if we have an idea when we might be able to share that good news.
Thank you. I had asked the question about 2 days ago and did not get the answer that we wanted at that time, but it's 2 days later. So perhaps we could ask again if we're any closer, or do we have some time frame that we may be able to make an announcement?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Roy DiClemente, and through Madam Mayor. Although technically we're 2 days closer, we still are not in a position to make a disclosure at this time for reasons that are beyond our ability to convey, that messaging. We're as anxious as you are, believe me. We believe the news is good news, and we're waiting for the opportunity to do a joint press release with you and ourselves and the tenant when the time comes, and we continue to ask for that opportunity to be sooner than later.
I'm quite sure we keep asking. They'll be pleased when the time is right. They'll be coming to us very quickly. Mr. Lander, have you been successful yet?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have provided a separate email as well with the phone number and conference ID, but unfortunately, I don't believe that they have called into the meeting.
I might suggest that, are there any other members of the public? We knew that Mr. Lander was wanting to speak, but are there any others at this time? And we could take them now, and then Mr. Lander, when you do get connected, then we can put you on immediately.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe they have successfully joined the meeting through a phone call. Mr. Lander, are you on the call?
I am here. Can you get me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for your patience as we figured out the technical difficulties. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to make these thoughts. I have to admit I'm a bit confused because there's lots of discussion about this being, the time for further review, and there's going to be future decisions in that. But I mean, I think the decision's already been made, or it feels that way. And so I guess just to give context to my comments, we understand that this is going to happen and go forward, and it's a great idea. It does sound like a great opportunity from employment, from an economic activity, and that will benefit us as a town and the business that we run and everything. So it's all good. My comments really are centered around the actual practical daily activity of truck traffic in the area, from a safety perspective, and just from the ability for other road users to move in and out of the area. And I have to admit, I'm at a bit of a disadvantaged because there was a slide in the earlier presentation that came up with traffic study information. I haven't seen that. That wasn't in any of the previous information, so I don't know what those numbers were. It was hard to read on the screen. It feels to me like even if there's 100 trucks a day in the area, that's going to be a lot of extra traffic. So I don't really know what the study was based on. The other comment about when the study was done would be interesting too, because of course in the last couple of years, road traffic has been reduced, but that's hopefully not going to be the norm going forward. So again, when was the study done and what are those results? I can't really read those numbers. Thanks for putting it up again. Regardless, Woodbine Avenue as it is right now can't handle this type of traffic regardless of whatever a study says. We've been through this before. My guess is it's a similar type of study to what was done prior to Green Lane, and we see how that works out on a daily basis during rush hour. So it's not very comforting that the study has been done and meets this requirement and that requirement, because it feels like it's not based on actual real practical observations of the traffic in the area. And as I said in my written comments, think back to when before the 404 extension was open, and that the traffic at the Woodbine and Green Lane intersection was ridiculous and dangerous in a lot of cases. So you start throwing a lot of more heavy vehicles. You know, we're not talking about 6,000 pound cars anymore. We're talking about 60,000 pound trucks. There's physics involved and an increased risk to all road users. And so that was really the gist of my comments. I don't necessarily need to go through, or do I need to go through all my comments that I wrote down and sent? You have those somewhere in there, but essentially trying to use the road with slow moving vehicles as they're trying to get up the hill, or fast moving trucks as they're coming down the hill. That's just going to create the opportunity for a coming together, as my grandfather used to call it. So, and just on a personal note, we live right at Woodbine and Green Lane at 18319 Woodbine. And even today as it is, if I'm traveling southbound and I put my signal line up by the golf course to turn into my driveway, it's amazing how often it comes very close to getting rear-ended even by the regular traffic now. So again, this is not something that may or may not happen. It feels kind of it's already almost happening on a regular basis. So just want to know a little bit more what in-depth traffic analysis there has been and what alternatives there are to, you know, moving in 1,000 trucks over Woodbine Avenue. And I'm not sure if that information is available. It certainly doesn't seem to have been made available. But you know, what plans are in place to minimize the potential for pretty dangerous consequences. And then a little more specifically, when it comes to the construction that would happen with the water main activities that were referenced, and going up Green Lane, specifically from my house where I have a well that is already subject to ground water and runoff. You know, how are we going to be protected from the impact of that construction? And then in general, the ability to get in and out of our driveway and all of my neighbors as well, and that are impacted by this. That's, you know, during the construction period, let's say 4 years or something like that. You know, how are we going to exist in our own lives with all of this going on? Has there been any consideration for that? It feels like there really hasn't been. I apologize if that's unfair, but that's the impression that we're all left with. And then again, going back to it, just how do you propose to move all of that traffic in and out of the area? That's what our concern is. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We've made some notes. I have, and I know other members of council have, and staff have on your questions. Woodbine is a regional road, and I would suspect that with our answers, we would find out that there's something, if not already planned, but something that will take place on that road. I use it regularly, as I think most members of council do. It's a busy road, and it's a narrow road, and it's an old road. So I have made some notes, and I know that staff have as well, and we certainly can get back to you. There will be a comprehensive report with a lot of these unknown answers. The questions that we've had now, we will make sure that they are on the report that comes forward. Mr. Ramuno, I just see that you have put your camera on. Perhaps you could answer a couple of those questions for us, please.
Certainly, Madam Mayor, to you. I mean, some good questions from the speaker. And what I can add is that when we prepared the secondary plan a couple of years ago here, the region was, there was a traffic study done on a general level that dealt with the transportation network. There are policies in ROP that require individual traffic studies to be submitted as part of individual development applications. And that's the work that's being done, as we speak. We've already heard from the applicant and the region, just to the speaker's comments, that as part of the site development application, the region will certainly require road improvements to Woodbine Avenue. There'll definitely be center turning lane movements and southbound right turning lanes as well. So Woodbine Avenue will definitely see some improvements as part of the site plan application. And when we do receive those final comments from the region, we can share that information with Mr. Lander. We do have him now on our mailing list, and we'll keep him apprised of as this application moves forward and we receive those comments. As we mentioned, this is the initial public meeting, but as we move forward with the site plan application, we'll share that information with the speaker and all other residents who have an interest in the application.
And perhaps, Mr. Lander, if you are speaking with your neighbors, that you can certainly let them know to be in touch with our planning department if they have questions, and we will make sure that those answers are within the final report. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. I'm comfortable, or I understand the distinction we're working through with respect to zoning versus site plan, but often members of the public are concerned about things that are really dealt with at the site plan level and not necessarily the zoning, which is really land use, rather than how a site plan comes together is, where all the bits and pieces go on the site. And I guess that I think is an important distinction for us to make tonight. One question I did have with respect to the site plan process and the traffic studies that will be required, while you've indicated that Woodbine may require some improvements, would that necessitate also an examination of the intersection at Green Lane and Woodbine? As Mr. Lander has indicated, I know historically that intersection for making a left-hand turn to head northbound on Woodbine was historically a challenge when traffic was heavy before the 404 was extended. So I just wondering if we have an assurance that that intersection itself would also be examined rather than just turning lanes and the ability for Woodbine itself to handle that traffic. Please and thank you.
To you, Madam Mayor, sorry. No, good point. And I'm not the engineer, but I've seen enough of these that the traffic study will have to address the larger area, the secondary plan area, and the surrounding area as well. So I'm sure that that work will look at the expected volumes within this block and in adjacent areas as well.
Thank you for that reassurance, Mr. Ramuno.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the public on at this time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we don't have any other additional registered speakers for tonight.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crone, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Mr. Ramuno. I've heard it said in the public that you know, some folks are you know, they're a little surprised by this. There's some people have the perception that we're just indiscriminately taking farmland and making it employment land. Can you maybe give, for the benefit of those watching this recording, that the historical context of when we made this employment land, and that it's not just a recent decision for us? Could you give a quick historical overview of the history of this land?
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. So dating back to the 2010 official plan, this area known as the Highway 404 Employment Secondary Plan area was always identified as our future employment area. It was just subject to the detailed land use secondary plan. We embarked on that. This council directed us to embark on the secondary plan, I believe, in early 2019. And we went through a full sort of public process and review of the appropriate land use designations and developed a secondary plan to guide the future development of this area for our future business park, which was completed in 2020. As I think I mentioned before, council adopted the 404 employment secondary plan in July of 2020, which established the business park land use designations and policies as a guide for the future development. The region approved that in towards the end of 2020. So this is the first zoning bylaw amendment application to implement those employment area designations. And so that this is step number one. Prior to that, back in early September, I believe, we did report to council on a pre-servicing earthworks agreement that Rice had submitted to get a head start on the extensive site works that were required to prepare the lands for employment uses. Council approved that in September of 2021. There's a good year's worth of site works required. We're now here at the initial zoning bylaw amendment application stage. The next sort of significant stage is for the applicant to submit, and they're days away or weeks away from submitting the formal site plan application and all the background studies. That will deal with the sort of site layout, building design, architecture, landscaping requirements, site servicing, detailed environmental work, traffic, parking, etc. And we will report over the next couple of months on that detailed site development application with all the technical requirements as well. That will then lead to, once council deals with that, that will lead to sort of the applicant to be in a position to pull building permits once we finalize the site plan and enter into a site plan agreement. Again, that's once all our internal departments and external agencies have reviewed the technical documents and provided their comments and conditions for development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may just follow up.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Ramuno, the last time we reviewed the official plan in 2010, how did we treat this area of land in that official plan back then?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it identified this area as a future employment area. So even as far back as 2010, and I'm not sure if it was mentioned before, but this entire employment area is comprised of about 500 acres, and our projections in our secondary plan that we would see upon full build out, a minimum of 5,000 jobs throughout the 500 acres. And this proposal, I mean, it's a significant proposal because it comprises, as we heard from Mr. McGovern, 150 acres of the northern portion of this block is all held under one ownership. And there are some benefits to that as well. And they're proceeding with this large scale facility. So it'll be as I mentioned before, it'll be a catalyst to the this business park being, seeing some development in this business park.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Mayor, just one last comment. I know we've heard some very good points raised today from Mr. Lander. We have some written submissions as well that speak to the impacts of traffic, of the water, and the dust and everything that's created during the construction. I would hope that even though there's not a ton of neighbors that would abut this this development, whether it's 1 or 500, I hope we can take every effort possible to minimize the disruption to their lives, and I'm sure Rice wants to be a good neighbor as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Ramuno and staff, for your presentation. But thank you. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And that's a given that our residents certainly will be looked after as this moves forward. And my next point was going to be if there are any other members of our public here tonight. I don't believe so, but if people are listening, that please send in your comments, put it in writing and send it in. We certainly will acknowledge it and keep you apprised of what is moving along. Your participation is very welcome, and by hearing all your comments, we're able to make a very informed decision or decisions. It should be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared by staff and presented to a future council meeting, assessing the merits of the application before us and providing council with a recommendation on whether the proposal should be approved, modified, or refused. So anyone who has not been able to speak to us tonight or present to us, please make sure that you send a letter in, you make appointments with ourselves, with staff to understand the process. We want to make sure that all of our residents are well aware of what's going on, no surprises. It's very important that the town receive the names and addresses of individuals having the interest in the application. So if you wish to be notified for future council meetings concerning this application being considered, you must provide your contact information to the clerk. And that way we're sure that you know of the evening or daytime that we are going to be deliberating. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have a right to appeal any decisions of council on planning applications to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town before the bylaw is passed. The tribunal may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of any application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded for storing and broadcasting on the internet. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information is being collected and maintained for the purpose of sending correspondence relating to matters before council and creating a record that is available to the public in hard copy format and on the internet in an electronic format pursuant to Section 27 of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions about the collection of personal information should be directed to our town clerk, please. And I would ask if there's any other comments from staff at this point.
Nothing further from staff, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a resolution, I believe, in front of all members of council. Be it resolved that Development Services Planning Branch Report P 2022-02 dated January 18th, 2022 regarding zoning bylaw amendment application by Green Lane North Realty Inc. and Green Lane North East GP Limited ZBA 2108 be received, and that the presentation, written and verbal comments made during the statutory public meeting regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application by Green Lane North Realty Inc. and Green Lane Northeast GP Ltd. ZBA 2108 be received, and that comments presented at the statutory public meeting be addressed by Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persichini, Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. I believe we've covered all of that. And with that, we will just move along to our deputations. And I understand we have no deputations at this point. Item G. Item H is presentations, none at this point. Item I is our budget committee presentation, and that is our 2022 proposed water and wastewater budget. Mr. Marshall, I see you have joined us. Welcome. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the Budget Committee. If we can go to the next slide, please. So on December 14th of 2021, Council adopted the tax-supported and development and fee-supported operating budgets for the town and a capital spend of almost $23 million. Tonight's presentation focuses on the water and wastewater component of our budget, which is the final component of our budget that requires approval for 2022. Next slide, please. So tonight we're going to be going through some of the topics for our budget deliberations. With us is our Deputy Treasurer, Valerie Adema, and our Manager of Operations, Christy Beatty, and they'll also be joining in on the presentation tonight. As we go through the presentation, we'll be talking about some of the key budget impacts, which is really the charge from the region of York for water servicing. We'll have a bit of a discussion on the proposed 2022 rates, give a bit of an update on electronic billing, and go through some of the key highlights and KPIs of the 2022 budget. Next slide, please. So the largest component of the town's water and wastewater budget is the charge that the region of York sends to the town for providing water supply and wastewater treatment. So it comprises almost 2/3 of the town's water and wastewater operating budget. And at last year in November, I believe it was, Regional Council adopted a long-range financial plan for the region's water and wastewater budget, which incorporated a 3.3% increase to its rates for 6 years. So this for 2022, that increase, along with an increase in flows due to growth in the town, has an impact on the town's water and wastewater budget of about $750,000, and that's the biggest impact to the town's water and wastewater budget. Next slide, please. So back in November of 2020, the town also adopted a financial plan for its water and wastewater operations. It proposed a 2% increase to its rates starting in 2022, and that 2% increase was in place to account for inflation and increase in projected reserve contributions that would be required for asset management purposes, and to to help with the increase in regional costs that would be forwarded off to the town. So in 2021, we froze our rates, and in 2022, staff was directed to come back with a budget with a 0% increase to its rates, and that's what you'll see tonight, that we have provided a 0% increase to our rates for 2022. Next slide, please. So this just shows what our current rates are and what we're proposing for 2022. Our water rates at Tier 1 level is $2.28 per cubic meter per month, and our wastewater is $2.19 per cubic meter per month. Our fixed charge of $23 per month for both water and wastewater services. And this is the third year that our rates are at this level. Next slide. So just wanted to provide a comparison of costs, and these for our York Region comparators, and these are based on 2021 rates. So as you can see, we are no longer the highest rate in terms of an average user, but for 2022, most of the municipalities are proposing an increase to their rates, and we have proposed to freeze ours, so this will change even more. Next slide, please. So this slide it demonstrates that that the town has been fairly consistent in terms of our water and wastewater costs over the past 5 years. So our increase in costs charged to our residents on an average basis over the past 5 years has been about 13%, where the rest of the municipalities in York Region have on an average increased their costs by about 32%, and that range is anywhere from 23% to 57%. And as I mentioned, most of the municipalities are proposing rate increases for 2022 as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Adema to go through a little update on our electronic billing and some highlights on our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of committee, and any of our members of public watching this evening. As part of our ongoing modernization initiatives and enhancements to our existing financial system, we've successfully implemented the option for electronic billing late in 2021. Account holders have the option to receive a PDF copy of their bill directly to their email inbox, or just an email notification to retrieve their bill via the self-serve portal. We've launched this service for both water billing and tax billing. The latest billing for water shows that we now have 913 registered users, which is about 9% of the total bills we process on a monthly basis. This number continues to grow each month with increased awareness of the program through promotion on social media, the EG website, and a printed message on the hard copy bills. This initiative promotes environmental awareness of reducing paper, as well as cuts down on our printing and distribution costs. Next slide, please. The full budget package was circulated to council members and posted on the EG website in December. For ease of tonight's presentation and discussion, we've included most of that information within these slides. As Mr. Marshall mentioned earlier, the main budget pressure we see in the operating side for the 2022 year is the increased cost of water supply from the region of York. This rate increase of 3.3% is included in the regional supply cost on the budget chart. Our manager of water and wastewater, Ms. Beatty, will review the capital projects in detail in a few slides. You can see the 4 main ones here. Next slide, please. Madam Clerk, could you just zoom in a little bit? The numbers are pretty small. There we go. This slide shows the rate-supported operating budget as distributed in the full package as page 4 of the water and wastewater package. As noted, the main driver of cost increases for 2022 is due to the regional costs for water supply and wastewater treatment. This accounts for approximately $746,000 of the increase, or 83% of the total expense increase. This increase includes both the cost increase from the region as well as costs of the increased flow from additional units on the system. Indirect corporate costs have increased by approximately 12% as a result of the review of all corporate costs and ensuring they are fairly charged between the tax-supported, fee-supported, and rate-supported areas of the town. The increase in contingency of approximately $14,000 represents the cost of living salary increase as approved by Council in December of 2021. Total cost increases of approximately $892,000 have mostly been offset by revenue. Revenue has increased by about $761,000. With a 0 proposed rate increase, this is completely related to the increased growth and increased water usage within the town. Finally, the difference between the increased costs and offsetting revenue is a resulting decrease to the contribution to reserve of approximately $131,000. Before passing off to Ms. Beatty to discuss the department metrics and capital projects, I'd be happy to take any questions relating to the operating budget at this time.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, there's an increase in the contingency budget. It's not a huge amount of money overall, but for that budget line, it's a significant one. I'm just wondering if you can share what that is. And if we have further details, perhaps Ms. Beatty or yourself could advise what consists of miscellaneous revenues. And I'm wondering if we might be able to find a better way of describing those revenues. Please and thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can take that. The 2021 COLA increase for cost of living was 0.5%, and the 2022 cost of living increase is 1.85%. So that's the reason for the difference in the percentage in the dollar amount there. For miscellaneous revenue, there's $51,000 in miscellaneous revenue. That majority is from late payment penalties. As well as a small amount for new connections and anti-tampering devices.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Crone, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff. Thank you for this presentation. I'm very excited to see that we're at another year of 0% increase. I think that's good. This is certainly a subject area that elicits always an emotional response from residents. So it's nice that we can keep the rates at 0. I noticed the region was going to increase the cost of the water portion of our bill, 5.84%. Let's call it 6%. Yet we can still deliver a 0% rate increase. How are we able to achieve that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can attempt an answer at that one and then maybe pass it off to Mr. Marshall if he needs to add some more. The majority of the cost increase from the region is included in the $760,000, but the regional cost increase, if we were not to account for growth, would be about $235,000. You'll see the majority of that is reducing the contribution to reserve of $131,000. So we have tried to contain the costs as much as we can and found some cost saving measures within the program to offset those costs. But again, the majority of it is reducing the contribution to reserve.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Just last comment. While I like seeing our, on our property taxes, East Gwillimbury near the bottom of the list for having the lowest relative property taxes in York Region. And I am glad to see we're making some headway on the water side of it. I won't be happy until we trade places with Markham when we're the lowest. So keep doing what you're doing, and let's keep getting our rates lower. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other questions, comments? I just had one, and I know I'm not alone in this when we hear from residents with quality of water. And it seems it will come out about tomorrow morning when we pass our water and wastewater, that people start to talk to us about the quality and the aesthetics of water, particularly in the Mount Albert area. And I don't know, Mr. Molinari is yes, I think he's on the call. I just wonder, when we start to talk about water and we start to talk about the pricing and whatever, when people run their taps and it's discolored, particularly new residents are shocked by it, but some other people who have put up with it for years and years and years continue to talk to myself, and I'm sure our Mount Albert councillors aren't alone in that as well. And I'm just wondering if, I mean, it's regional water that we're buying. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity at some point to sit down with the region staffing to see if there are some options to make this water much more appealing to people. I'm just wondering, Mr. Molinari, are you there?
I am, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's just something that every year when we pass our water, we hear from many people about the quality of water, particularly in Mount Albert. And those that move in as new residents and are all excited about being part of our community end up calling us or sending us letters saying there's something wrong with the water because it's brown or orange or whatever the case may be. And is there a point where the region is going to deal with, I'm assuming it's the water treatment plant in Mount Albert, but is there something greater than that that's taking place there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. We have been in touch with the region, and there, if you council would recall, there was an EA that was being done on the Mount Albert water treatment facility. And that EA was really put in place to look at what's the best way to remove some of the aesthetic issues that were causing problems. And not those specifically would be iron and manganese in the water. So the region has identified through that EA, they've identified what the best way is to remove those aesthetic items, and they've concluded on what that would be. So that's the good news. In terms of implementing, once they remove those particular items, they have to be able to dispose of them, and their plan is to dispose of it through the Mount Albert waste facility, and the waste facility is already close to capacity and its ability to handle those types of issues. So they're looking to see what they can do in order to deal with the plant on the waste side of it, and then implement the project. So there's going to be a design that has to take place. That's expected to take roughly a year or two, and then construction would follow that with the proper facility in order to implement the water treatment measures in order to deal with those aesthetic issues. So there is work that's being done on this, but it's going to take a couple of years to get there. But that is kind of that's kind of where this issue lies in a nutshell, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I believe I have regional council coming up in the next week or so, and whether I deal with it at a council meeting or a face-to-face behind the scenes to find out. I think 2 years is too long. And I'm seeing other members of council feeling the same way. Water's pretty fundamental for our daily lives, and while we know that it's safe, it's unappealing at most times that they use it. So perhaps we can do a little bit of flushing out in the next week or two and come back to council. And if there is some movement, then great. And if there's not, then perhaps we can take a look at another option. Thank you, Mr. Molinari. Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think it's just worth saying we do a good job letting our residents know what's going on. However, I think that we can always do a better job. I mean, you know, social media doesn't reach everybody. The newspaper doesn't reach everybody. And it doesn't matter how you do it, you can't reach everyone. But I think we have to strive to do a better job of communication about the simple things. You know, what happens when there's a water main break? How does that affect your water? How come today it tastes like has a different taste than it does tomorrow? And how come today it might be discolored and tomorrow it might be clear? I just don't think that the regular member of the public or our resident understands all of that. And I'm not saying that I do either, but you know, I think we can always do a better job to try and educate those people.
Thank you. I agree. Councillor Carruthers, you have a question, comment?
Yes, thank you. Following up on what Councillor Foster's saying, I think we can do a better job of communicating a lot with our public. And one of the questions I know that we get is about why are the water rates so high here compared to other areas. And Councillor Crone talking about maybe one day we'll be down as far as Markham. It's my understanding that it's the number of kilometers of pipes that we have to run. You know, the fact that our residents are so spread out that drives some of the cost of the water. So I appreciate that, you know, another 0% third year in a row is wonderful, but I'm wondering if we can just have a refresher on why the rates are as high as they are.
Perhaps I could suggest that we have roll it into a workshop. Or did you want to delve into it today?
A quick 1 minute on what the driving costs are that would be different in our municipality versus others. I think that's what residents want to hear rather than a longer explanation.
Just looking at staff, and I'm not. I'm just wondering who would like to tackle
Madam
this.
Mayor, may I suggest that's an excellent question? York Region on its own has a much higher cost structure, number one. So if you look at York Region compared to Milton or St. Catharines, we don't have direct access to a body of water, Lake Ontario. And so York's costs, number one, are significantly higher. And following that, I would prefer, if we could, to have that as turned into part of the recommended approval, hopefully, for the 0% budget. And we will bring a report or a memorandum, the more fulsome response to a very soon council meeting. I would suggest either late February or early March is when we'll be able to bring that back as a directive to have another discussion on it. I don't think it does possibly require a full workshop, but let's bring back a tactful, fulsome response in the near future, if that's okay with council.
Thank you. I didn't mean to make more work for staff. I was just actually looking for a quick response when you know, they call it the elevator pitch, when someone comes up to you and you have the time of your ride in the elevator to respond to a question. So when we get the question about why are our rates higher than the rest of most of the rest of York Region, I believe that we've heard in the past it's because we have more pipes in the ground, and you know, I don't need even a half a workshop on it. I really just want the 1 minute response on that.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead.
Actually, Mr. Marshall has his hand up. I'd like to hear from him before I ask my question or comment.
Maybe he has your answer. Mr. Marshall, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, you are correct in terms of the amount of infrastructure and the length of infrastructure that we have to service. And also another factor that's involved with our rates is where we are in our asset management. So we have been very aggressive, well, not aggressive, but very responsible in terms of providing reserve funding for our asset management and eventual replacement. So we're in a pretty good position in terms of where our reserves stand. And most of them, well, I won't say most, but a lot of the municipalities in York Region aren't in the same position that we are. So that also impacts our rates. So between the infrastructure and where we are with asset management, those are the key drivers on why our rates are higher.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all I was looking for. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gandy, you had a comment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm prepared to prepare a briefing note to council that will have the key messages as well as update the website with the same information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you very much. I guess from my perspective was that short answer is lots of pipes we've saved for the future. The challenge becomes trying to sell that asset renewal and replacement message to the average taxpayer. They prefer not to have to save for the future and rather have to just pay for what they have to pay for now. And it's truly a challenge to communicate that. In the past, during this process, staff have advised us that while our rates were high, it was inevitable that our neighboring York Region municipalities were going to have to raise water rates in order to be able to keep up with the demands of their asset renewal and replacement advisors. And I'm curious to know if that's actually been the case. So if we are going to be reporting back, that's kind of that would be the key message I'd like to hear is, you know, we've done a good job of saving for the future, and we're fortunate that we are in a position to be able to deliver a 0% for 3 years in a row. But what does that look like down the road when we try and maybe it's Ms. Gandy's comments in her briefing notes can help us sell the save for the future message to our taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Webster.
Not to complicate the matter, but there's another key factor as well. East Gwillimbury is debt-free, probably one of the only jurisdictions in North America that is debt-free. And one of the easiest things to do as a government entity is to borrow money, particularly now when it's apparently cheap money. And a lot of municipalities or levels of government, the province of Ontario, #1 expenditure in their budget or calendar year now is servicing debt interest. And we don't have that issue. And so I actually look forward. I commend Ms. Gandhi in trying to keep it simple, but I think we'll do a nice little report back to council that talks about the many factors that go into our rate calculation. And I think it'll be helpful, hopefully for our residents and businesses to understand as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Persichini.
Madam Mayor and the rest of the staff and councillors, we have a brochure that explains pretty well, breaking down detail by detail, how the water gets there, how safe it is. I think we're doing a great job. I don't understand all this mumbo jumbo about doing the studies and all this crap. This is good stuff. You guys are doing a great job. We're keeping the rates down. Let's look at the brochure. Let's promote it. I think this is great. This is really great when we do it. It tells you how safe it is from when the water leaves Lake Ontario and it comes to your door. So that's enough of this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Persichini. You must have had it close by at hand. Thank you. Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
For those of us who aren't on municipal water, could we get a copy of that, please? Because it sounds great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, staff. We go into many little areas at budget time, but I think it's good comments and good learning for all of us. I have a resolution. I'm sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe there are 2 additional slides that staff have prepared, if you don't mind going through those.
We don't mind at all. We're really involved with water tonight. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I only have 2 more slides to go through, and they are our key performance indicators and as well as some capital budget details. So you can see on this slide, the first graph shows over this period between 2017 to 2021, there's been an increase in both the total linear kilometers of water main and sewer mains related to steady growth. In the center graph, you can see that regulatory sampling of our distribution system, as well as our stormwater ponds, has fluctuated between 2017 to 2019. And this is because in 2018, staff did a network analysis and identified some sampling efficiencies while continuing to meet our regulatory requirements. The team was able to drop from 6,000 samples down to 5,000 samples, which saved staff time and energy on a go-forward basis. And then you can see from sampling from 2019 to date has continued to increase, again related to growth. Finally, the number of active residential and non-residential accounts has increased steadily during this period. And in 2021, there was just under 10,000 accounts. Next slide, please. So the proposed 2022 business plan and budget includes a few items. Under water operations, we have $180,000 budgeted for water meter replacement. This is the final year of the 5-year program to update our water meters, which still require manual reads. Considering the pandemic impacts to the program last year, we're happy to have completed a number of outstanding replacements, and we look forward to completing those final outstanding meters this year. We have $275,000 budgeted for automated meter readings. This item will leverage in the newly upgraded water meters through the installation of data collectors to remotely collect water meter readings. This allows us to phase out the manual reads, reduce staff time that's currently spent driving around collecting the monthly reads, and as well as take full advantage of our metering technology, for example, leveraging continuous monitoring of flow data, identifying leaks, and overall providing enhanced customer service. And finally, we have $650,000 allocated for water main replacement design for a section of thin wall pipe PVC on Yonge Street, as well as some asbestos cement AC pipe in Sharon. The town has applied for federal grant funding, which we're still waiting to hear back on, to support the construction of these projects once designed. And I'm going to pass it over to the Director of Operations to go through the water wastewater fleet proposed budget. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy. Through you, Madam Mayor. There's 4 vehicles that are scheduled for replacement this year within the water wastewater budget. They're all on a 7-year scheduled life plan. But these range in life right now in age from 7 to 11 years. And all these vehicles also have in excess of 200,000 kilometers. So because of that, staff are recommending them for replacement. And I'm quite happy to report that we are hoping that the one pickup truck that we're able to obtain an electric vehicle to replace that shortly when they come to market. The one vehicle there that's listed as a new vehicle is a growth unit that's funded out of development charges for existing staff. And what it's going to do is help us no longer borrow vehicles from other departments, namely fire department and roads, and also to eliminate the need for rental vehicles that comes with quite a high monthly cost. That's all the comments I had on fleet, and thank you very much. And we're open up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions about fleet? I have Councillor Foster and then Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Not a question so much as just a comment, and I've thrown this one around before. Mr. Meggett's shaking his head. I know he knows exactly what I'm going to say. I just hope that these vehicles are suited correctly for the job that they're going to do. Again, I've always said everybody's vehicle doesn't need to be a four-door, four-wheel drive pickup truck. And when I look at $60,000 and $70,000 and $80,000 replacement cost, coupled that with the fact that especially now in a pandemic, most town vehicles you see driving around generally only have one person in them. They may not need to be a four-door vehicle. So, you know, even a pickup truck, a standard cab truck, I believe can be bought a little bit cheaper than a four-door, four-wheel drive. But I do understand the costs and the pressure. So just a comment.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the capital sheet that was circulated to us as part of the budget package, it wasn't part of our prepared agenda, but it was circulated to council previously, notes that it's repair and replacement for the fourth vehicle. It seems to me that this might be a service level increase instead. And if there are savings to be had with respect to monthly rentals and other sorts of expenses, it would seem to me that there would be an operational impact and some savings to be realized, which aren't showing on the capital sheet. I guess from my perspective, if we're going to be adding another vehicle to the fleet, I'd like to have a better understanding of what the operational impact is. How often are we borrowing vehicles from roads and the fire department? How much are we spending on rentals? And what's the efficiency that we're going to be realizing from a financial? And obviously there's a workflow one as well. But I'd like to have a better understanding before I approve this purchase. Thank you.
Staff, any comments on those requirements?
Yep, so I'm quite happy to talk to that. So right now, the water department is using a vehicle on a full-time basis from roads that we've given them. This helps eliminate that and repurpose that vehicle back to roads, because quite honestly, we're down to one pickup truck for a crew of 10 staff when they need something lighter. And to Councillor Foster's opinion, his comment on right sizing, I would much rather see staff in a smaller pickup truck going off to pick up garbage or whatever roadside activity they're doing versus a larger vehicle. And we've had to rely for the last 6 months on rental units that I mentioned, and they're about $1,000 a month right now if we're able to get them. And it's been very problematic. And we did try as a stopgap over the summer to use a spare vehicle from emergency services, and just logistically of dropping the vehicle off and picking it up at a fire hall on a daily basis, as well as removing tools and equipment out of it every day, it just became really problematic for both of us, for both partners there. So that's why we're really recommending this from a logistical standpoint. That would be a huge impact to the current staff complement.
Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead.
That makes a lot more sense than what was presented to council, and I appreciate that information. And if I may just give some feedback in future, that sort of detail, if we've spent $6,000 this year alone on rental vehicles, that in itself makes a huge impact when I consider this request from staff. So thank you for that additional information, Mr. Meggett, and I'm okay to move forward if the rest of Budget Committee is as well.
I'm seeing nodding heads, and there's enough that it's a majority. Thank you, Mr. Meggett. And so we have, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe there was an addition to the clause added. So I just wanted to pull forward the updated resolution for council's consideration. And I believe the additional request was to report back on additional information regarding water rate calculations.
Thank you. Yes, that's my recollection as well with the discussion. Anything else? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead.
Yes, I did have one other item, Madam Mayor, and that was the automated meter reading project that's slated in the materials in front of council for $275,000. In the budget materials that were circulated, it's actually listed as a multi-year project at a cost overall of $1.1 million. We haven't yet completed the transfer of the meter technology to the new RFID meters, and I I'm a little concerned that I don't have a full understanding of the savings and operational impact of that $1 million expenditure before proceeding with a $1.1 million draw from reserves. And so from my perspective, I'm hesitant to approve a 4-year project without the first phase of that project even being complete. When we approved that meter project, the meter replacement, it was promised that there would be significant savings and efficiencies introduced. And I'd like to realize some of those before we invest further in this. I know that the presentation notes that there's I think they called it a propagation study. And I'm just wondering if we might, and this is through you, Madam Mayor, to staff, if it might be more prudent to authorize that propagation study, the expense needed for that, and then have staff report back to us on where that tower might go, what we would be seeing in savings, and so on. It's just, I'm concerned that at $1.1 million over 4 years without the first project being done just doesn't make sense to me, but I'm, again, happy to be convinced. Thank you.
Other comments and questions regarding that topic? I'm not seeing any. You have suggested that we put that on hold, and perhaps we can work on it the first 6 months of the new year. Well, we're in the new year. And would that give you a comfort level, Councillor Roddy-Clemente?
Mr. Molinari has his hand up, so perhaps he can shed some light on the matter.
Mr. Molinari, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yeah, this was originally intended to be a multi-year project, but your point's well taken. At this point in time, we put a budget in that we felt was a little robust, that would be able to do everything that we needed it to do. But at this point in time, without that initial study being completed, we don't really know what that is yet. So to your point, it does make sense. The first step in this is to do the propagation study. And out of that will come all of the rest of the things that we need to do. We don't expect that we're going to need towers to be constructed in many locations. We're going to try and see what infrastructure we can use that's in place already. And so we've done a little bit of testing already. We've had a tower that was installed just across from the Civic Center that was being used on a trial basis. And we found that it was very successful in doing that. So we believe that the study will be able to refine what we need to do in the future. And maybe if what we could do this year is just use the first year, we won't do the full multi-year, and we come back as part of the 2023 budget with a more detailed plan as to exactly what it is we need to do. At this point in time, we don't have all the costs broken down. But if we can have that seed money to start off, that'll get us going, and we'll be able to realize some of those savings and some of those improved efficiencies for the public in terms of customer service sooner than if we wait another year to do that. So that's it. But we're open to whatever council wishes to do with this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Roddy-Clemente. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Molinari. How much do you expect that the propagation study will cost?
Maybe Miss Beatty, if you can give me a hand with the exact dollar value of that would be helpful. Thank you.
I don't know if I want to say the exact dollar value, but I think it's free. So the good news is we'll work with our partners through Evans Supply, who's the sole source distributor for our meters. So we're working closely with them. They've put up that little prototype to demonstrate how successful it could be in Sharon. They're actually collecting, I think it was over 500 houses when I looked at it, and within a 2-kilometer radius. So it does look to be quite successful. The propagation study will go into much more detail, and then we'll have to start talking about where could these actually be installed. And I think that's where some of the financial implications come along. So we're hoping to maybe install a few of them to see, is it going to be as successful as we think it's going to be? But I think it's very reasonable that we come back to council after the propagation study is and show what the proposed next steps would be. We're just hoping to try and implement a few locations that look like they already have town facilities, are at the right height, and we could just easily install those at some key locations to pick up a number of, it sounds like Civic Center could be a good option. So ones like that is what we're looking for the first year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
So would it be appropriate for us to be approving money for a pilot? Would that be something more along the lines of what we would be looking at then?
Would it be that, or would it be the first step of 4 steps moving forward? It might just be semantics.
Mm-hmm.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe that I don't think we're going to need the full amount that's listed in the budget for the first year. We'll need some of that. And I think to go in with 0, I think, we'll probably find that we'll need some money to do something along the way. So I think it would make sense for if you want to reduce that budget down, that's fine. But I can certainly guarantee to council that we will not go ahead and start spending all kinds of money on this project until we've gone back to do that study and find out what needs to be done before we roll out a large program. So if you want to reduce the budget or leave it as is, that's fine. But certainly we'll come back to you with more details on what we're going to need to roll this out properly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, this was your initiative. How are you feeling about the dollars? Does it stay, or do we portion it down for this coming year?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just typing something into the chat for the clerk, but my suggestion was, given that the propagation study was free, however, given that Mr. Molinari would like us to give them some money towards this, I was going to suggest an amount of $50,000. So my motion would be that the automated meter reading project be amended to $50,000 to be funded from development charges, I think is where it was coming, or from the reserves to be amended, and that staff be directed to report back with a detailed business case for further steps. Would that be appropriate, Mr. Molinari? Would 50 do it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not certain of the dollar value. 50 may be a little light depending on what we have to do, but 50,000 is better than nothing. And if nothing else, we can get started with this and come back to council and ask for more if necessary.
Thank you. It seemed that Ms. Beatty was saying that it was a free study, and we've already got a bit of a pilot going. So if it wasn't costing us to do that part of it, then it seemed to me that $50,000 was an appropriate amount to study this a little bit further. But always happy to consider this further. I guess I'm happy to hear that we're going to study it further and not spend the money until we have a better sense of the savings that we're going to realize. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy DeClemente. I'm not seeing any other questions. I would like to make sure that it does move forward. If 50,000 is a little light, Mr. Molinari, I'm sure that you can come back to us, or would we be better while we're gathered together now doing budget to increase it perhaps to 75, or perhaps you could give a suggestion? I'm just pulling that one out of the air.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think, it's tough to say exactly what that number would be right now, but 50,000 doesn't go very far these days. I would suspect that for 100,000, we could, I'd be pretty comfortable that we could do most of the things that we needed to do for that. And if it goes, that's certainly enough to get started without having to come back to council and ask for more.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Persichini, go ahead.
Well, we can give him 100,000, but if he doesn't use it all, give it back to us.
Excellent idea.
I mean,
are you moving that, Councillor Persichini?
Yes, but as long as he gives it back to us, he doesn't use it all.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder with that? Councillor Crone.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Is this in relation to the entirety of the motion? Because I was just going to include that section as part of the entirety of the budget motion. Just bear with me for one moment. I'm just pulling everything.
I put a proposed wording into the chat as far as the amended resolution.
Thank you. I have just grabbed your revised version. Madam Mayor, this motion was moved by Councillor Persichini. I don't have a seconder at this time. However, the additional clauses are outlined in the highlighted sections.
Can everyone read that? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carruthers? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. And now we have our budget committee resolutions in front of us.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that was the budget committee resolution.
Did it as well. Okay, put it all together. We're finished with that. We're down to the adoption of the council minutes for the meeting held on December 14th. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Persichini, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. We are at Community Parks, Recreation and Culture. Mr. Karmazin?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, we've prepared 2 items today. The first item is our annual recreation update. I'd just like to highlight that I'm appreciative and proud of Community Parks, Rec and Culture staff for their work this year to cost save to offset all of the revenue losses due to COVID, while still providing safe and best possible service delivery where we're permitted to do so. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the recreation update memo.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Karmazin? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persichini, Councillor Roy DiClemente, be it resolved that Community Parks, Recreation and Culture Memorandum dated January 18th, 2022, entitled CPRC Recreation Services Update, be received. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Madam Mayor, may I make a very brief comment? I just wanted to commend Mr. Karmazin and his team for delivering on an exceptional result as far as the offsetting of revenue. We've heard stories from other municipalities where they've had to lay folks off. They've had significant operational impacts, and all things considered, I just wanted to comment on what a tremendous financial result this has been. Obviously, the human impact has been great, but from a financial perspective, I wanted to commend Mr. Karmazin and his team for the work that they've done this past year. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all members of council feel the same way, and I know many times it's your people that are in the front line when people aren't happy as well. So not only the financial portion of it, but also the people portion of it has been tough on everyone, and they have handled it with class and done a terrific job. So please pass that along to staff. The second motion I have is regarding the farmers market update. Any questions on that? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persichini, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Please thank our staff that work on the farmers market as well. I know that they're starting to ramp up. It doesn't seem like it's close at all, but I know it's around the corner. And with the amount of people that came to the farmers market last year, people are looking for outdoor activities that they can still be within the community. It's sometimes challenging when they when they are outside and not have a mask. And I know that they worked very hard to make sure that everyone was safe, and they did a good job. So thank you. I'm at item L, and that's finance. I have no reports at this time. Are there any comments, questions? I'm not seeing any. I will move along to corporate services. They are the same. There are no reports at this time. Any questions, comments for corporate services? I'm not seeing any. We'll move to item N, community infrastructure and environmental services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 3 items for council tonight. The first item is a report. It's with regards to design coordination for 2022 regional road projects. And this report, the town and the region, we typically work very closely together, discuss our capital programs, just to make sure that we're coordinating for efficiencies and preventing conflicts. So the region advised us late last year that of their ability to coordinate town works within a couple of regional projects that we had been working on them with. And we just found out towards the end of the year that we could proceed with a few items that they, on a couple road projects that they were moving forward with. And that would include things like some concrete sidewalks, multi-use paths, and lighting. And in one particular case, a conceptual water main design. So as part of the region's larger projects, it just makes sense for us to join them at the design stage so that we can make sure that everything's designed comprehensively and together. It's just an efficient way of doing that. So we were hoping to make this part of the 2022 budget process, but timing made that difficult, as I mentioned. So I know we're coming to you early in the new year for this. We just didn't have the ability to get everything together in time for the 2022 budget. But at the same time, we certainly didn't want to lose out on this opportunity to be able to coordinate with the region. So that's essentially the ask, and we're happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you very much. Questions, Mr. Molinari? I'm not seeing any. Community infrastructure and environmental services. Councilor Brody Clemente, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment or a request. I know that this connection is very much desired by our Trails Committee, has identified it quite some time ago. Just on behalf of our active transportation enthusiasts in the community, if there's a way to make this not sidewalk and more multi-use pathway, I think that's an investment that's worth making. And I realize that there are some challenging grades in this area, but if there's a way to make it so that you can ride a bicycle and push a stroller without that's above the curb in a safe fashion, then I think that's it's a significant connection that will go a long way to improving our active transportation network. And I just wanted to put that plug in now. It's a huge expenditure, but I think it's well worth doing, and I'm happy to support this, especially since if it means that we'll have the design done and a shovel-ready project in case there's any grant money to be taken advantage of as well. So happy to see this move forward, but just a plug in for the multi-use pathway rather than just sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Report, CIES 2022-01, Design Coordination for 2022 Regional Road Projects. Be it resolved that Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Report, CIES 2022-01, dated January 18th, 2022, entitled Design Coordination for 2022 Regional Road Projects be received, and that council approves staff to partner with the Regional Municipality of York to advance the detailed design of sidewalks and multi-use paths, mid-block street lighting, and conceptual alignment of water mains along Yonge Street and Highway 11 as outlined in Report CIES 2022-01 at a cost of $315,000, and that council authorize the general manager of community infrastructure and environmental services to execute the necessary documents with the regional municipality of York in a form satisfactory to the procurement manager and town solicitor. Any questions? I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Roy DeClemente, question?
Happy to move it. I just wanted to amend the second clause that says at a cost of $315,000, comma, to be funded from the DC reserve. I just wanted to make sure that we note where the funding source is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll move it, and seconder, Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 2, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Center Street Public Engagement and Revitalization Design Contract. Mr. Molinari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we're pleased to bring this report to council to award this contract to SEMA in order to bring this very important project forward. So I know that there's been, it had a slow start with the last procurement process, but we're very pleased to have received a couple of very good submissions, and SEMA is a really good consultant. We'll be in good shape with this one. The award allows for the review of existing background work, conceptual designs, public consultation, and detailed design. There's also some provisional work that can be incorporated if necessary. A lot of that's dependent on some of the feedback that we've received from the public and council, and we've allowed for some extra scope if there needs to be, depending on what comes out of those conversations. SEMA was the highest scoring proponent, and the RFP is within budget, and staff are recommending proceeding with the award. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Molinari. I am happy to hear about this. This is great news. I know the folks of Mount Albert have been hankering for this, and it is welcome. Just curious, when do you think the consultations will begin? You know, I think we've been discussing downtown revitalization since 2014. So I'm glad to see that we're ready to get on with it. When do you think we'll actually be going to the public and chatting about what they'd like to see in downtown?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, it's going to take a month or two for the consultant to get on board and review some of that background information. So I would suspect certainly towards the end of Q1, beginning of Q2, we'll be in touch with the public and moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I know a lot of the public are certainly looking forward to this, so I think it'll be a very busy pick that we have. And you'll move it, Councillor Crone. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Foster. Be it resolved that Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Report CIES 2022-20 dated January 18th, 2022, entitled Center Street Public Engagement and Revitalization Design Contract P21-18 award be received, and that council award contract P21-18 to CIMA Canada Inc. in the amount of $742,228.88 plus applicable taxes as part of the larger multi-million-dollar project primarily funded through grants and development charges, and that council authorize the general manager of community infrastructure and environmental services to execute the necessary documents and agreements in a form satisfactory to the manager, procurement, and town solicitor. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We're on to item number 3. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our third and final item is with regards, is an advisement really, with regards to proposed night work for the regional road project on Yonge Street from Davis to Green Lane. There's been a lot of consultation with the region and stakeholders just to try and minimize impact to the general public because Yonge Street is such a highly used route. And such an important area for many businesses and residents. So what the region is planning on doing is having all lanes open during peak periods, and they will strive to undertake all the work between 9 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. Sunday to Friday. So that's just an advisement that we wanted to make sure that council was aware of, and happy to answer any questions, Madam Mayor.
Questions on the project? I'm not seeing any. I'm assuming we'll be advertising, or the region will be advertising that quite a bit. And when do you think it will start?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's likely to start in Q2 and be complete by the end of 2024.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crothers, Councillor Foster, be it resolved that Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Memorandum dated January 18th, 2022, entitled Proposed Night Work Region of York Project 85710 Tender RFTC 21263 Young Street Reconstruction Davis Drive to Green Lane be received. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Molinari, do you have anything else for us today?
Nothing further at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anything that members of committee have for? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just I didn't know if Mr. Molinari had a verbal update for us with respect to snow removal, given the significant snow event that we had. It may just be that the work is done, because I think from my perspective, very few calls and engagements with residents. It seemed to run pretty smoothly, but I know in other places it wasn't quite so smooth. So I didn't know if we had an update from an operational perspective with respect to the snow operations.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can give you a little bit of an update. I'm not sure if Mr. Meggett's still on the line, but
yes.
You know, there you are. So I know that our staff were out as soon as the snow flew, and you know, we had all of our equipment out on the road. I believe there was one piece of equipment that was down. I'm not sure if you got that back or not, Jeff. But all of our mains were completed the first night, and the crews came back in early in the morning to make sure that the roads had a full pass by early in the morning today, and I believe they still may be working on sidewalk. But I'll pass it over to you, Jeff, to give a more fulsome update as to where we are. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, what can I say? We're very, very pleased with staff. They did an exceptional job. Our neighboring municipalities declared significant weather events. We heard that some EOCs were even opening up to try and make sure the communities are safe. We did a great job. All the roads were plowed 3 to 4 times, depending on mains or secondaries. It was all completed by around 10 o'clock this morning. Be completely honest, we are struggling because of the volume of snow with sidewalks, and that continues. We're transitioning over to using snow blowers for that to try and get through some of the heavier windrows and some of the heavier snowfall. And we're hoping we're about 85% right now. We should have that completed mid-morning tomorrow. So we're in very, very good shape.
Good, thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. I thought that was the case. It certainly seemed to be that from a resident's perspective. I wonder if we might include some of that messaging on our social media for our residents to hear that that all was well, and if there were some spots that that staff have identified a few areas, etc. And also the reminder about if there's been sod that's pulled up, that staff will return in the spring to repair. But I think that good messaging is well worth sharing with our community. And I wanted to thank our staff for such a good result. Thank you.
Yes, Jeff, please pass along to the staff our thanks and appreciation for the work that they do. While we are sleeping, they are making our roads clean and safe. So thank you very much. Okay, is there anything else under Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services? Mr. Molinari, anything else?
Nothing further from me, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Just a
Madam Clerk.
comment, Madam Mayor, I have my hands up there.
Oh, sorry there,
That's
Councilor.
okay. Just maybe another note that to let the public know about the cars, you know, to make sure when we do advertise what the other stuff, maybe we should also to make sure they don't park their cars and they can easy to snowplow, because that's another problem. In certain street, people park their cars and they got to go around, and it's makes a lot of work. So if we could also publicize that as well, you know, please be aware that, you know, our snowplowers are out there, and it makes it easy for them, you know, to instead of going around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent point. With that, I'm not seeing anything else. Thank you, Mr. Molinari. Appreciate it. Move along to item O, Emergency and Community Safety Services. We have no reports at this time. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll move to Development Services. Also, no reports at this time. Any questions, comments for staff and Development Services? I'm not seeing any. Legal and Counsel Support Services, I have none at this time. See Mr. Horner here, awaiting.
Happy to answer any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Horner? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr. Horner. Administration, no reports. Any questions or comments at this time? Seeing none, I will move to item S, correspondence for consideration. There is none at this time. Item T is resolutions. There are none at this time. Bylaws under U, none at this time. Other business under V. While we usually don't get that far in the alphabet. February council workshop topics, reserves, and a closed meeting regarding a real estate matter, and that will be in February. Mr. Webster, do we know the date at this time?
We do, Madam Mayor. We're busy in February. I think we're meeting, we have council the 1st and 15th, I believe, and the workshop is in the middle month or the middle week, February 8th.
Yes, thank you. People can mark their calendars now. And we are down, thank you, Mr. Webster. We're down to item confirming bylaw, be it resolved that a bylaw 2022-003 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting held on January 18th, 2022 be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy Clemente, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried, and we have an adjournment at 8:26 p.m. moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you, council. We had a lot of business tonight. We got through it. Thank you for everybody's cooperation, and keep safe and keep warm.
See you soon, folks.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.